Hi, everyone, and welcome to Innovative Approaches SMEs Can Take to Build Resilient Global Supply Chains. I'm Pamela Hyatt. I'm a content marketing specialist at FITT, and I'm thrilled to be presenting this fantastic event along with our partners at OWIT-Toronto. And it's both a great way to kick off our new partnership and also to start FITT's Small Business Export Success Month. So today's event includes an outstanding panel of experts who will guide us through a timely and complex topic and hopefully answer many of your questions about your business's global supply chain and how to strengthen it. Before we begin the session, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. So although you might be attending from across Canada and the globe, at FITT and OWIT-Toronto, we acknowledge that we walk upon the traditional territories of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Let's get started with a short intro into our presenting organization. So the Forum for International Trade Training is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to providing international business training, resources, and professional certification to individuals and businesses. FITT's international business training solutions have become the standard of excellence for global trade professionals across Canada and around the world. I'll pass it over to Rashpal now to talk about OWIT-Toronto.
Thank you, Pamela. The Organization of Women in International Trade, OWIT-Toronto chapter, is a not-for-profit organization, professional organization designed to promote women doing business in international trade by providing networking, business development, and educational opportunities. OWIT-Toronto is also the first Canadian OWIT chapter, part of a global community of over 2,000 individual members in 30+ local chapters across Central, North and South America, Western Europe, Africa, and Asia, as well as virtual chapter for a group of professionals involved in international trade without a local chapter where they reside or work. FITT and OWIT-Toronto have recently partnered to build and enhance women's global business skills, expertise, and knowledge. And this is our first official joint event, so we're absolutely thrilled to be here together today.
So you just heard from Rashpal. We're thrilled to have her here to lead and moderate today's discussion. Rashpal is a seasoned professional with expertise in supply chain management, international business, learning design and academia, spanning over 15 years in serving public, private, and nonprofit organizations. During this time, Rashpal founded her own strategic management consulting firm, working primarily with small and medium-sized businesses. Rashpal serves on 3 boards, which include OWIT-Toronto's Board of Directors as the VP of Education, as a board director with Supply Chain Management Association Ontario, and as a board director with the Canadian Public Procurement Council. Currently, she leads the Procurement Services Division at the town of Stouffville. So Rashpal, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'll pass it over to you now to move on to today's topic.
Thank you so much, Pamela. It's an absolute pleasure. We are all probably well aware of the economic turmoil caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the knock-on effects it has had and continues to have on a global supply chain basis. Businesses of all sizes have been affected all around the world, from IKEA's empty warehouses to bare grocery store shelves. This has exposed vulnerabilities in global supply chains and value chains that we've seen, the increasing international fragmentation of product production processes, and also the changes that they've had on the structure of global trade overall. Simultaneously, the trade pressures for companies engaged in international trade to build supply chains with full traceability and accountability for social and environmental impact continues to build. Companies are currently challenged to make their global supply chains more resilient without weakening their competitiveness in the marketplace. So today, we will discuss how this can be achieved. We'll go through some practical steps that small businesses can take to respond and act upon today's supply challenges. And we'll also talk through how to set up supplier strong relationships and mitigation plans that will all help to prevent disruption and delays. So now let's go on and let's hear from our panel. We've brought together some really great, truly knowledgeable professionals to address today's topic. Let's have each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves further. And we'll start off with Amishika.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amashika Baeda. I am the district manager of one of our business development teams here in the Greater Toronto region for Export Development Canada. I manage a team of 8 locally engaged account managers who work directly with Canadian exporters to offer knowledge, financing, and risk mitigation strategies. I have been practicing international trade now for over 14 years. I'm a proud CITP certified professional, and I'm so pleased to be joining this panel and answer any of the questions that you may have for us today.
Thank you. Next, we'll introduce Miriam.
Hi, everyone. It's Mariam Faladurat. So I'm going to sharing my 20 years experience in international trade and development that I gained in 3 different continents, in Middle East, in Europe and North America. I'm also a CITP. I received my MBA in London and also my doctorate in the US with focus on entrepreneurship. And I have actually the track record experience in management consulting in the fintech, food and beverage manufacturing, and also international trade. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And Laura.
Thanks, Rashpal. So Laura Rigudo, I currently am the Loyalty and Engagement Manager at FITT. I'm also a certified international trade professional, and I started my career many years ago working for a foreign office, a trade commission based in Toronto, foreign trade commission based in Toronto. So I bring experience from, in terms of supply chain from a foreign office, from the procurement side for Canadian companies that are looking to procure from overseas. So I'm hoping to share some tips and tricks today with all of you, small businesses in particular. So I'm excited for this wonderful panel, and I see the participants and many certified international trade professionals, many CITPs, well, on the panel for sure, and also in our audience. So welcome everyone today.
Thank you so much to our esteemed panel. Such an exciting group here, and I want to give everybody a big warm welcome that's joining us today. So why don't we start things off by talking a little bit about how today's international supply chain environment has kind of evolved, and what are some key challenges to be aware of? And we'll start off with Miriam.
I would say definitely been noticing a lot of challenges these days due to the COVID-19, and also before that a bit due to the China economic situation. So one of the main actual issues we're noticing during the past couple of 2 years and almost 3 years is a logistic disruption, the labor issue, the lack of proper raw materials for the manufacturers, and also delay in receiving the raw materials, production delays as a result, which actually impacted receiving the final product for the end user. A limited actually access for a lot of freight forwarding companies to booking the shipping lodge is another thing. So that's like a chain that impacted from A to Z, the supply chain workflow around the world, that everyone impacted from the manufacturers, the freight forwarding companies, the governments, and also both public-private sectors, at the end, the final consumers.
Great points. Amishika, did you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with her anymore, Miriam. The logistics issues, that we've been seeing our clients face has been devastating over the last 2 years. Regardless of the type of industry that you're in, the impact of this pandemic has been instrumental in determining a company's ability to kind of maneuver through it. So from our lens, what we've seen, the key challenges that companies have faced have been the cost of inputs, which was been mentioned. The increase has been devastating in terms of understanding how they can price the increasing costs of inputs onto their customers, while not hitting companies' margins has been a real challenge for companies. As Miriam's mentioned, the cost of shipping and freight has gone up by, for some of our clients, 3 times, 4 times, where what used to be $5,000 to send a shipment is now $25,000, sometimes $50,000. And so for a lot of small business companies, this has been, a huge burden on them. Shipment delays, which leads into companies having to understand their inventory management, right? If you can't foresee when your shipments are going to arrive to be able to put product on the shelves, companies are been forced to buy a lot of inventory up front, which means you have to pay for that inventory up front, but then also manage trying to sell it when you don't have an actual sale yet. So what we call inventory management has been very challenging for companies to manage throughout this time, keeping up with the increased demand at the beginning in 2020 and 2021. But now as we're entering into 2022 and we're entering to a different stage of the pandemic, consumer spending has gone back down. Companies are managing an overstock of inventory and how to get rid of all this product while not taking a hit. And we're also seeing the cost of financing has gone up due to the interest rate hikes, which will also have a huge impact on companies as we enter into 2023. Unfortunately, there's very little we can do about it, but there's different ways that companies can kind of get ahead of it and find creative ways to have that not be too burdensome. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the impact of the political instability around the world, the things that we're seeing in Europe, the things we're seeing in the UK, the things we're seeing in Asia, even the impact of political unravel in South America, even the election in the United States that's going to be coming up this fall has a huge impact on companies' spending and labor issues, as we mentioned. So it's extremely important for companies to be aware of all the political unravel and instability around the world as well.
Definitely a lot of great points here raised, and I think many of these challenges are not going away anytime soon. So it's absolutely critical for organizations to become more and more agile as they continue to navigate their international supply chain environment. In terms of businesses that are setting up for new international supply chains, or perhaps are modifying their existing supply chains, where should they start building in that resiliency factor? Does it start with finding the right suppliers, or are there a few other elements here to think about? Laura, did you want to kick things off for us for this?
Sure. I think that often it's overlooked. So for businesses that are located, let's say you're located in Canada, it's often overlooked to reach out, to start developing relationships with the different foreign trade offices that are located locally. So the trade commissions, typically the trade commissions are located in Toronto. So for whatever country, or if the country doesn't have a trade commission or a trade commissioner network, they would have a trade office that's together with the embassies. So whether it's consulates, embassies, or trade commissions. So it's really important to start to develop relationships, to get on their radar, because I mean that's what I did for many years. And the mandate of the trade offices, foreign trade offices here, is to actually reach out to find who's the buyers, like local buyers, distributors, wholesalers for their country's products here. So if you start to forge relationships with the trade commissioners, the trade officers here, then you get informed about, upcoming trade missions where they're looking for buyers in particular, or different trade events. Sometimes you get invited to a buying mission in the actual country where you can meet with the suppliers and see on the ground. So it's often overlooked, but that is the mandate of the trade officers here in Canada and around the world. I mean, it works the same way, right? It would work for the Trade Commissioner Service as well. For other companies overseas that are looking to source products from Canada, it's a good idea for them to contact the Trade Commissioner Service office in that country. So that would be my recommendation. And it's often, you think you're too small to reach out, that they only want to do business with large companies. That couldn't be further from the truth, because it's the smaller companies that might have a particular, procurement requirement, and those officials can really, really help you. So that's would be my recommendation of where to start, and then start diversifying your suppliers, right? So if something happens, then don't just look at one country, look at suppliers from a couple countries, but it takes a lot of groundwork. You have to vet them. That's why the trade office can help you vet the suppliers themselves, but I would say that it would start there.
Thank you, Laura, for your insights. Any other insights from the panelists with respect to this particular area?
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Oh,
ahead.
please go ahead, Marianne.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I couldn't agree with Laura's comments more. The Trade Commissioner Service is, we call it, Canada's best trade secret, because it's there and a lot of companies don't know how best to leverage it. So, I highly recommend you take advantage of those services and know that those services are complementary. They have active agents here in Ontario or across Canada, as well as representatives overseas. And their role is to really understand the markets and provide as much advice and guidance as possible, who the key players are, business ethics, how things are done in those countries, that can all go towards helping you when you're entering into some of these markets. Now, I will say I'm a big proponent of it all starts with a plan. It starts with creating a plan and then having a backup plan, and then sometimes even having a backup plan to your backup plan. The more prepared that you can be, the better. The more you do your research, the more that you understand the landscape in which you are engaging, not just from who you're selling to, but who you're doing business with, who your suppliers are. Understanding the landscape that in which they operate will help you be better prepared to manage when things, as things flow. So by building an export plan, it really allows you to do your due diligence. It assesses your own personal company's financial position, human capital, the production capacities. If you're a service company, what you're able to do from a services standpoint. So having a plan in place will be a great foundational work to help then determine what your needs are, what you actually need, so that you can get the right suppliers, right? Because if you don't have a plan, it often, we see a lot of companies will end up spending frivolously because they're just kind of everywhere and there's no kind of a roadmap for them to follow. So having that roadmap in place really helps you determine where you should start and how you can leverage the different resources and things out there. And then it further supports you in building better relationships with your suppliers. So that's one thing that I'll say. Listen, the pandemic has been, has forced companies to reevaluate everything, right? And part of that is also their supply chains due to the increased cost of shipments and overseas COVID lockdowns and political and economic instability across Europe and Asia. It's forced a lot of companies to come back and look at suppliers in North America or in other markets that they can leverage. And so part of the research that you're doing is to look at other markets and get advice. There's different agencies, from your local chambers of commerce to provincial government agencies that are there, the Ontario government, if you're in Ontario, or whichever province you are across Canada. EDC, Export Development Canada, has a ton of resources available on their website, as well as your freight forwarder and customs brokers. There's tons of free information out there that can help you with complementing the services that the Trade Commissioner services as well. And all of this is offered often complimentary as well. So I highly recommend leveraging what information is out there as well. And before all else, as a trade finance agency that we are at EDC, I will also encourage you to really understand your cash flow. Understand your costs and your cash flow, how you're going to finance this when you're going to have suppliers. Your suppliers may ask you for payment terms, meaning you pay them, if you're lucky and you ask them for payment terms, sometimes they'll give it to you, sometimes they won't. You have to get the cash flow to pay them up front. And then depending on the payment terms you have with your clients may pay you in 30 days, 60 days, sometimes 90 days. So before you engage in these relationships, it's really important for you to understand for your company, how much can you afford? Like how much can you afford to pay your suppliers, and how much can you afford for your client, for you to wait for you to be paid from your clients? We often talk about ADVC. It is a luxury if you are at a company where you can get paid up front. It's a luxury because most of the time your clients want time to pay you and your suppliers want payment up front. So you have to figure out how you will finance those transactions. And that is a key component to the successful implementation of a supply chain system for yourself.
Yeah, and if I want to add to the comments of you guys, definitely market research. But before even a market research, we need to understanding a lot of companies are, am I mute? No, I'm not mute. All right, I thought I'm mute. If they are starting a business or they are already in the business. So there are two different actually situations. For both companies at this situation, they need a really good market research. Part of the market research, they can just sit back and getting the services from EDC reports, from Canadian Trade Commissioner reports. But I highly suggested, all the business owners, either as an entrepreneur or small business company, medium-sized company, they do the research by themselves as well, because it's really giving a better understanding regarding the market they are going to enter or expand in that, all right? Then additionally, they can also rely on, the available reports, because the point is that not all the reports are updated in the Canadian, let's say, EDC or Canadian Trade Commissions for not that specific sector that the business is looking for, all right? So, but the point is they can actually collect both information, having a better understanding regarding that specific market, and then finalizing their strategy, having a new strategy probably, or evaluating their strategy that they already had it, but due to the pandemic, which is a lot of factor change, it's really necessary. This is my recommendation, having a really good understanding regarding the market, what changed during the past 2 to 3 years due to the COVID-19.
Great points. Thanks so much, everyone. And also a big shout out to Pamela. Thank you for sharing resources in the chat. For everyone who's chiming in, feel free to bookmark some of those key resources that are coming in through the chat. They're absolutely terrific. The next question we'll kind of change gears and go to is, how should small businesses in particular approach finding new international suppliers? So, thinking of how can they ensure that they are cost effective, and what type of research goes into finding the right supplier?
You want anybody to jump in, Rajpal?
Sure.
Okay, I'll start. So a lot of the comments that have been made already, obviously you have to do your groundwork. There's a research that must be done. So I do at this point have to, talk a little bit about FITT, the resources that are available, because, you want to, let's say you want to enter into a new market, or in this case, you want to procure from a market and find foreign suppliers. Sounds so easy, right? But then the truth is you kind of need a roadmap to do that. You need to understand, and Mashika, you talked about that, where the importance of creating like a plan, whether it's an export plan, but you also need to learn that you need to become strategic about sourcing and procurement, and how you become strategic if you don't really understand. So FITT has tremendous courses like the A to Z's of international trade, and learning to navigate through some of those complexities is really what FITT does. And so whether it's a course on global value chains, or like that one is because it's the topic for today, but teaching you, there are different units within that course which teaches you what to look for when you're looking to find foreign suppliers. How do you do a cost benefit analysis? How do you really determine what you can afford to pay for those goods and for those inputs? So I think, there are lots of resources out there. That's great. But I think you need to, often cases, if you want to embark on this journey, you do need to upskill yourself. Or if you don't have time to upskill yourself, you need to ensure that somebody within your company has those skills, has taken, some of these courses, or if not a full course, maybe a workshop on procurement, on, how to do a proper cost benefit analysis. Because if you go in blindly, often areas are overlooked. And let's say you start to procure from a foreign supplier, but you don't do your due diligence because you don't know what to look for. Those mistakes can be really, really costly. So I would say it does start with that homework, and often that homework starts with upskilling, finding out what you need to know, what's important. And Pam sharing some great FITT skills, some links and some resources, and we'll talk a little bit at the end of this session today about about our courses and discounts. But it's really important to gain that knowledge of what you need to do instead of going in and forging relationships kind of blindly.
Yeah, I could not agree more. As a small business, you can't be everything, right? And I know often they're everything, but by doing the analysis of where your gaps are as a business will empower you to know where you can go to get help. And there is help out there. And as we were mentioning earlier, there's a lot of agencies out there that can help you. But don't forget that you can also lean into your community, right? So whether it's with a trade association or other, friends that you have, leverage the relationships around you to get referrals. Often suppliers are found through referrals by speaking with people, going to trade shows, asking where people find products. That is where often things are done. In addition to your Google searches, getting those referrals it can be extremely beneficial to help you to know where to start. I also believe strongly in getting trade references. So if you Google somebody and you find them, you don't know much about them, there's not much on a website, you can ask for a trade reference, right? And ask them to produce references for companies that they've worked with. If you don't have the budget to go and fly there to see the whites of their eyes and see their actual productions, that's one way that you can get around that. But honestly, I think if you want to do it properly, and I think if you want to save yourself a lot of headache down the road, you may have to get a plane ticket and fly there to meet the companies that you want to do business with. And depending on which markets around the world that you're doing that is a practice that is highly encouraged. So understanding the cultural nuances of the different regions around the world is important, because that might be a practice that is encouraged for you to go and meet with them. In some, markets like in South America, where they actually will invite you to their home. It becomes a massive relationship, a personal relationship sometimes in addition to business. So, but I know for a lot of small businesses, they don't have the resources to do that. But I will mention there is a program that's run through the Trade Commissioner Survey that's called CAN Export, CAN Export. It is a government grant program that helps subsidize the costs of small businesses that are looking at entering into certain markets around the world. If you've never done business there, they can help subsidize some of the costs of going to a trade show. If you're looking to hire a consultant, if you're looking to hire a translator and things like that, there's more information on their website. And I highly recommend you look into that to help you subsidize some of those costs. So if you are thinking of going and visiting those markets yourselves, that's a way to kind of help you with those costs. But if that's not possible, as I mentioned, the trade references can be one step to help you with understanding who you're going into business with.
Hi, hello. Hi. Can I say something? Hi, my name is Jose. Cardozo? Hello?
Hi, Jose.
Hi, Jose.
Yes, hi. Actually, I live in Canada, but I'm in Africa right now, Angola. But I'm in South Africa at the moment. Sorry, South Africa. Actually, I never done import-export trading, nothing. But I have a business background, you know. So I have a friend of mine that approached me to get into oil and gas business. So he's been teach me actually to work as a procurement. It's like a very interesting story. And then I realized I started attracting a lot of people in South Africa. So I've started getting a lot of order from Angola, which is I'm from Angola actually. I've getting a lot of orders, and then so far everything is going well. I've been trying to get in touch with FITT. Also, I've tried to do some courses also while I was in Canada, and then I don't know what happened. I couldn't do it, but since I joined the oil and gas business, everything started going well, and the client can pay without any problem. But I'd like to become a member of you guys' organization. I think that would be awesome because I want to connect Canada because I received a big order from E&I from a company, okay? But those machines are only made in Canada and US. So this is why I wrote down, I'm looking for Canadian procurement or supply chain for them to join me so that we can partner together. I'm open for business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. I think what we'll do is why don't we circle back to your question towards the end of the session when we'll be looking at a few Q&A towards the end. So feel free to put your question in the chat and everyone else, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and then we'll do a Q&A session at the end just as a side note, okay? But great questions so far in the chat there. Thank you for sharing additional resources to the panelists here as well. Let's maybe switch gears and let's talk about negotiating with suppliers because this is a really interesting topic and just wanted to garner some insights from all three of you in terms of some pointers that you can give for negotiating payment terms and contract details with suppliers. So what are some negotiating tactics that you might have? Thinking of Incoterms and how do cultural differences come into play here? And maybe we can start off with Miriam.
Sure, definitely. Before we starting this question, I would like to add something regarding the previous question. One of the best sources, the Canadian companies, they can find it in terms of the suppliers, is contacting the commercial section of different consulate or embassies of that foreign country based in Canada. That's their job, exactly like trade commissioners, to helping Canadian companies to finding their suppliers, even for investment, all right? Different incentives, investment in terms of greenfield, brownfield, showcasing their suppliers, so it's much easier, and they can actually helping you in translation if there is some sort of a language barrier or cultural issues. This is very important. We can actually getting their help as well, beside Canadian Trade Commissioner. With regards to this question, the negotiation, it's an art. Bottom line, it's an art. We need to develop it. It's a sales. It's all about how we can actually making a win-win situation for both parties, as a supplier and also as an importer here. So we can actually consider different cultural issues in a negotiation, which I guess in Canadian Trade Commissioner website, we have a lot of resources regarding the cultural ethics, how to negotiate with different countries, what is important for them. For many cultures, I was talking with Ali at the beginning of the sessions, let's say, for example, they need to meet with you. You need to build a trust. They want to feel in your presence in their market, at least for a couple of times, then they are going to start, doing business with you. And it will be actually, these meetings, even during like a trade show or like, flying to meet with them, or even, online meetings, is you're trying to building a good trust with them. This is important. And also we can actually receiving different, let's say, samples from them, test it, vetting the supplier, checking their payment terms, and offering a proposal at the end, and also selecting those it's really suitable for us. And also, like Laura was saying, definitely diversifying the network of suppliers we have. It's that minimum, I would suggesting to my students as well, let's say 3 suppliers in every single market you're active in, that minimum 3 supplier ABC, and then you can prioritize them, who is number 1 for you, number 2, and number 3 in terms of different products and the quality and the prices they have it. These are the important points in selecting your suppliers and in negotiation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. And I think it's really important for you to understand your costs, right? And understand your Incoterms. So there's a lot of courses that are available to understand your Incoterms and which Incoterms to use with your suppliers and with your clients as well. Who's responsible for what? Who is to pay what? In terms of insurance, and who is to pick up when and where. All of that is an important component as well, and that will help empower you. The more that you can be empowered in your negotiations, the better. The more information you have, the better. You have to remember, at the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself. You can't look out for anybody else but your own company, and people will always be looking out to look out for themselves, right? So at the end of the day, if someone's going to, I always say this to my clients when I was an account manager, is if somebody's looking to put money on or food on the table, whose table are they going to put food on? It's going to be their own, not yours. They're going to worry about themselves. So the best way that you can protect yourself is to be educated as much as possible. Get the expertise. If you don't have the expertise in a certain area, get the expertise to educate yourself or empower yourself to make the right decisions. As well as get legal advice, right? Make sure your contracts are well structured from the beginning, well structured, very clear in terms of who's responsible to do what, and make sure as much detail is there as well. So that's what I would further add to Miriam.
Yeah, great. I couldn't agree more. So again, so we did have a question that I just saw about negotiation and if you need negotiating skills before. I think a lot of that and the confidence to go into negotiations, whether you're negotiating with a potential buyer for your product or negotiating with a supplier, I think is being prepared. And I know this was mentioned both by Amashika and Miriam, being prepared. So the Incoterms, super important. Maybe some of you go, Incoterms, what are we talking about? But Incoterms are international commercial terms. Very, they're not required. You don't need to have them in a contract, but they definitely facilitate transactions because they take out all of the ambiguity because they're 3-letter acronyms. There are 11 of them. But the important thing with Incoterms is that you understand the Incoterm, you understand what you're agreeing to. So if your supplier says to you, I'm going to, this is my price, FOB, I don't know, San Antonio, Chile, and you agree to that, but then you go, oh my gosh, that's in South America. So then I'm responsible for getting that shipment from South America to Toronto or wherever you're located, and you don't factor in all those costs, and you don't factor in when the product is actually delivered to you, which would be in San Antonio, and the risks that are associated with that. So Incoterms, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. Partner with, your logistics provider, your freight forwarder. They have the expertise. So if you don't understand before you agree to a price that has an Incoterm, understand what that Incoterm really means to you and your obligations as a buyer. Like if we're talking about procuring, your obligations as a buyer, they're set out in the Incoterm rules. So understanding it's a really important point, but it all goes back to being prepared. So in negotiation, if they're quoting a certain Incoterm or a certain price with an Incoterm, you could be in a position to say, it's the first time I'm dealing with you as a supplier. I'm not comfortable with buying FOB. You know what? And I've never had to clear it through customs. So understanding what your comfort zone is and understanding that, you might be willing to pay a higher price if they get the product to you landed here. So maybe your comfort zone is only on what they're called D terms, but landed here in the country. So Incoterms, there's a lot there, as I mentioned, but that's part of the negotiation, doing your homework. If you don't have the answers, partner with somebody that knows more than you do, and don't agree to anything that you're not comfortable with, and be willing to negotiate and have your reasons for not accepting that price with that Incoterm. And you know, it has to be win-win. So I think often your suppliers want to make that sale, so they would be willing to negotiate with you.
Such great tips and techniques. Thank you so much. So speaking in terms of the risk side of things, how can a small business without the resources of, say, a large corporation diversify their supply chain to help mitigate any risks and avoid disruption for their customers more specifically? And Mariam, did you want to start us off with this one?
Yes, I had a problem with this unmute. Okay. Would you please let me know the question one more time? I was just dealing with this system issue.
Sure. So how can a small business without the resources of a large corporation diversify their supply chain to mitigate risk and avoid disruption for their customers?
If I want to just actually making like, you know, in brief, again, a good market research, doing the market research by themselves, helping, you know, getting the help from the Canadian Trade Commissioners, EDC resources, BDC also, they have a really good resources, Business Development Bank of Canada. And also one of the really good services from EDC that I'm always using for my any transaction, we have it for the export, because for my food and beverage company, we just do the exporting, we don't sell the products in Canada. It's accounts receivable insurance. It's really helpful for Canadian exporters. First of all, they can check it out if the buyer, it's reliable. It's that they have a good credit score. This is one thing. For example, in the US, we wanted to deal with an American company based in New York, and I checked, you know, with EDC, they said, we are not giving you, you know, this accounts receivable insurance. Why? Because this company had a really bad recourse. So if you want to do it, the risk is with you. But normally this service is really good. So it's one of the best resources Canadian exporters they can use. So doing a market research, finding the suppliers and negotiating with the suppliers, how to find the suppliers. We talked about it. They are different resources. Again, Canadian Trade Commissioners online directories as well. And also the commercial sections of these countries in Canada, commercial section, and their commercial secretaries. They are really helpful. Definitely trade shows, visiting if they have the budget to just visiting that country, talking different, you know, with different people in the trade show, also checking the distribution channels over there. These are really helpful, and also negotiating. Another really good source regarding the Incoterms and also finding the best route is freight forwarders and shipping companies. They know everything regarding the Incoterms, and they can be really helpful for you know, even entrepreneurs, individual entrepreneur, or even the companies to just knowing more about what is this Incoterms about. For example, the X works is the best for the exporter and the worst for the importer. All right, under the DDP, the best one for the you know, the importer, and the worst for export. So these are the tiny things that, like Laura was saying, we are not writing the agreements all the time, but these are negotiable, and we need to be clarified on that. Okay, who is responsible for what?
Well, I think Miriam took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, we didn't even pay, EDC didn't even pay her to say that, but I could not agree with her more. Export Development Canada provides risk mitigation strategies, and that's what this is, right? Mitigating your risk and determining where your risk is. If you've got a company that you've done business with for 20 years, nothing's ever gone wrong, you don't want to insure them, that's fine, right? But if you've got a company that you've never done business with before, that's emailed you, you're worried about giving them payment terms, you know, whether it be net 15, net 30, net 60-day terms, net 90 in some cases, it's really daunting. The idea of shipping products somewhere around the world that you don't know whether you're going to get paid, it can be really scary as a small business company, especially when you're starting out or you're building a new relationship. But as I was mentioning earlier, the reality of getting paid up front is just not possible for for a lot of companies, right? So EDC does offer a variety of insurance solutions to cater to what your needs are, depending on how large you are and depending on the size of your contract as well. So we have an online insurance solution that Miriam was mentioning, which is called our Select Credit Insurance, where you can go online through our portal, apply for a credit limit through our system. We will do a credit check on that company and then advise you as to whether we can insure that company or not. There is no commitment to get a quote from us. There's no financial commitment. You can get a quote from us and then determine whether you want to pay for the insurance or not. You'll get a quote of what the premium will be. And there's no minimum size, and it's ideal for companies who have, the occasional order here or there, small amounts, and it's a way to educate yourself. Again, we keep saying this over and over again, but we mean it. It's about educating yourself. Understand who you're doing business with. And in addition to the research that you do or the trade references that you get or the referrals that you get, you still have to do your due diligence around understanding who you're doing business with. And a credit check is one way. Now, sometimes we can't get information on every company because of, maybe financial information is not available. But again, I say to our clients all the time, you have to remember that payment terms are a privilege. You give that privilege to somebody to say, you're asking me time to pay you. I don't have enough information to make that determination. So until there's information that's available about your company, until I can trust that you will pay me on time, you may have to negotiate 50% upfront or maybe installment payments or maybe 15 days or whatever. But in that process, it's about educating yourself to get the information that's necessary so that you can make the right determination for your company. And EDC is one resource there that can help you through that.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. I just want one comment. No company's too small. No company's too small in engaging in international business, international trade. And there are a lot I believe Hitendra dropped some information in the chat. There are all kinds of organizations out there other than the ones that we've mentioned. Like you can reach out to your shipping companies. They have small business, they have departments that are, small with small business solutions. And often, so I've been mentoring a company with an e-commerce model for the past 9 months, and their biggest issue was shipping costs. And so my recommendation to them was to actually reach out to the small business solutions division of their courier. I'm not going to name them because they all have a small business solutions department, that they understand the unique challenges of small business. They get it, and they have tools and resources available to them, provide guidance to them to, how to avoid some of the risks, like depending on the products that they're shipping or the products that they're trying to procure. They offer solutions for them. So you're not too small. You're not too small to trade, to buy, to sell internationally. You just need to align yourself with a network, and don't overlook the shipping companies. Don't overlook, like as was mentioned before, freight forwarders, the logistics companies. They're a great source of information. So thank you for that, whoever dropped that. But you're not too small. I want to get that message across. You're not too small. And often foreign suppliers do like to forge relationships with small business, because then you can really develop that relationship. And that goes a long way. I know my experiences in South America, and when I look back at those relationships that are forged between, exporter and importer, it's really strong. So then it does make it easier to negotiate payment terms. It makes it easier to negotiate, Incoterms and contracts when you forge those relationships. So that's my piece.
I would like to
And
add here, if you don't mind. Yes, this is in continuation to what Laura has been talking about. And I'm one of the FITT candidates who has completed six courses of FITT program using a local community college. And I have been doing import and export for last 12 years. And with this particular passion, I went back to community college to do the 6 FITT programs, and doing FITT programs basically humbled me down and cleared lots of bottlenecks. What I have been doing all these years to validate and to correct my activities. So talking about small businesses, most of the participants here are, some of them are students and some of them are budding small companies coming up to become a big. And a company like me who had been importing one carton of something from Malaysia or from Thailand or from China or whatever, I'm hoping that someday I will be able to export and import a container full load of shipment in a ship kind of thing. So sometimes the Incoterms works for me, sometimes it does not work for me, but definitely what I'm trying to bring onto this particular discussion is I'm focusing on mostly for people who are planning to do business, number one. Number two, people who have small business transactions. Number three, who have a little bit of establishment either in e-commerce or maybe they are building up the business to become big, so far big, big kind of thing. So we as an individual, as an entrepreneur or a business owner, sometimes we hesitate to make a phone call because we think that, oh, we're going to get into the loop of that, press 1, press 2, press 3. Companies like FedEx, DHL, there's so many pushing the buttons. Sometimes we feel hesitant calling EDC. We sometimes feel hesitant even calling FITT, asking small little questions. My suggestion to everybody who has a dream to proceed, it takes one email followed by several phone calls, but eventually you will get connected to the right people. And don't give up. It is you have to push yourself. You have to push yourself, make a schedule, keep pushing. And finally, companies like FedEx, I was so shocked that they have so much solution. It's just that we are not approaching them. And you'll be surprised to know they not only give people, like we feel that they are providing services on a premium cost, but no, there are solutions for the small business. FedEx, DHL, name the companies, the big banners, they have solution for you. It just takes one phone call. Pick up the phone, pick up the email, and get in touch with them. That's all. Thank you so much, everybody, for hearing me out.
Great point. Great point. Thank you so much for that. We're now going to go to our Q&A very quickly because we're just nearing on 5 minutes here. So again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will address them directly. So the first question I have here, panel, is from Preeti, who asks, you briefly touched upon the problems arising with inventory management in these challenging times. Do you have any specific tools or techniques that you foresee taking the forefront, especially in the area of smarter and more efficient inventory management? What, in your opinion, do concepts like JIT hold for the future? JIT meaning just in time.
This is a very complicated question.
And I'll put it in the chat as well, just as a quick recap as well. In case you can address one or two elements of the question. Yeah, and it's really hard to answer because I don't think there's one solution for everybody, right? It depends on what you sell. It depends on who your clients are. It depends on, where your suppliers are. It's a problem. And the problem seems to change as the seasons are changing because consumer spending is changing dramatically. We can anticipate that moving into 2023, the interest rates are going to continue to go up and the pressures on consumers are going to be high and it's going to change their spending. So
a lot of companies, and you'll notice when you go into certain retailers, you'll notice that suddenly their shelves are full of inventory. And it's because that inventory that they put in a year ago is now finally arriving, but it's behind, right, in terms of the spending. So they're going to have to get rid of that inventory quick because you can't have a lot of inventory sitting on the stores. So that means that they're going to probably have to discount inventory to get rid of it, which is going to cut into their margins. So it goes back to the comments I was making earlier, which is to really understand your costs, really understand your clients' buying patterns. There's been a lot of companies that have found ways to buy in bulk at a discount, to also start sourcing product in North America to reduce timeframes as well. The just-in-time buying is very challenging in some regards because, to your point, like again, customer trends are changing like the wind, right? So if you
For sure.
you can't rely on volumes of sales like you can. So it's a real. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. I think that the best thing that you can just do is to really understand your own personal company's strategies and margins and pricing to do the best that you can to try to mitigate it. But it's going to be a bumpy road. It will be a very bumpy road for a bit.
And I know earlier, thank you so much for those insights, Mishika. Earlier, we discussed negotiation very quickly. How important is it to have negotiation skills while doing import and export? We just have a few seconds here before we sort of kind of close out our session here. So who would like to address this? This is a question from Samantha.
I would say it's really important in everything. Even in your personal life. It's not only in business. In every single moment in the life, negotiation skills are really important to providing a nurturing situation. We call it a business win-win situation for everyone. So and it's getting better by practice. It's a skill that they can learn it. There are a lot of resources these days online, specifically on YouTube, from major universities around the world that they are teaching negotiation skills. So I would highly suggest it for people to just, watching those videos, give it a time, practice it, see the result.
Yeah. And if I can make one quick comment before we end, there was something I think was mentioned earlier about assumptions. In my time at EDC and previously, the best thing that I can recommend to our small business clients out there is never assume. Never assume that somebody's going to do what they say they're going to do. Never assume that someone's going to pay you on time. Never assume that resources are going to. Never assume anything. And the more informed that you are, the more it gives you more power to make the appropriate decisions for your company. And you have to be agile. You have to be willing to change. And especially in this time, being agile will be fundamental to the success of your business. You're going to have to shift and change. So it goes right back to what I said at the beginning, is the importance of having a plan and then having a backup plan to that plan, and most likely be prepared to change that plan again in 6 months or even a year. So be agile and not making assumptions is a key recommendation that I would make for any of our small business companies out there.
Right.
Amen.
And I would add to that about doing your homework. I mean, that goes in line with that. And so part of negotiation, a huge part of negotiation, is the cultural aspect that we didn't even get into today. Understanding the culture of the person you're negotiating with, the country that you're trying to go into or import from. Huge. We don't have time today to talk about that, but it's doing your homework, understanding, not just what you can pay, but the understanding, part of the negotiation is understanding culture and all of that.
Sure.
And there's so much there.
There's no easy way to do this. Being a small business is really hard. It's really, really hard. There's no easy fast track way to do it. You just have to navigate and find the right route for you and your business.
For sure. Great insights. Thank you. I'm going to now pass it over to Pamela for a wrap up and closing remarks. Thank you so much.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Rashpal. what a great discussion, everybody. There's never enough time, is there, to cover everything in a session like this. So thank you so much for an interesting and informative discussion.